Hi guys, and welcome back to this week's episode of Let's Chat Ethics. I'm your co-host Oriana,
And I'm your other co-host, Amanda.
and this week we're going to be the start of the mini-sodes where we discuss the EU's guidelines for trustworthy AI. And for anyone who doesn't know what the guidelines include, they have 7 principles, and they're human agency and oversight, technical robustness and safety, privacy and data governance, transparency, diversity, non-discrimination and fairness, societal and environmental well-being, and accountability. So this week we're going to be talking a bit more in depth about human agency and oversight, and then next week we'll get into technical robustness and safety and so on from there. So Amanda, tell us your thoughts on human agency and oversight.
I guess first of all, it's sort of what is the EU's description of human agency and oversight, right? What does it mean for a system to take this guideline to heart, I guess? And what the EU says is that AI systems should support human autonomy and decision making, and they should act as enablers to a democratic, flourishing, and equitable society. And I think this is actually has obviously, I mean, the first thing that comes to mind for me obviously is the election manipulation that has been in the news for the past few years, I guess since at least 2016, maybe earlier. The whole Cambridge Analytica scandal and how they used AI and how they used AI to manipulate or sway people's opinions when it comes to the election. So that's one interesting thing about it. It reminds me of the work of Michael Klenk, who did some work on AI systems and nudging and human autonomy, right? So if I set an app to encourage me to wake up earlier because it's what I want, right, then it's technically manipulating me and nudging me to do things, but is it really sort of what's the word I'm looking for? It's not impeding. The opposite of impeding. Is it actually taking away from my autonomy? And I think in this case we could say no, right? Because I have planned it. But so that's kind of the two areas where my brain kind of goes with this guideline.
Yeah, I completely agree. Actually, talking of Michael Klenk's work and nudging, they actually did bring that up in the documentary that we were talking about 2 weeks ago. Why is my brain's gone dead? What's it called?
The Social Dilemma, yeah.
There we go, The Social Dilemma. So yeah, thinking of nudging and how, if you're not on a certain app for a while, it will send you an email and a notification. And they were talking about how there were teams that literally looked into the manipulation of people and how the psychology of addiction and how you get people addicted to these apps. So I think, in terms of human agency, can you say that you have complete agency over what you're doing when you're on social media and what you're ingesting? And I think that definitely plays into the election. And it's kind of interesting since we have a 2020 election coming up, which they've already seen. Like I just saw today, Twitter has announced that they're going to stop fake accounts who are pretending to be black people supporting Trump. So that kind of manipulation's already, been taking place and is currently influencing an election right now. So I think that guideline is a really important guideline that the EU have put in. So I would say that's a good step in the right direction, but can it be completely achieved?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't even know that this was a thing. The fake black Trump voters or Republicans, I guess. So that's very interesting. I think it's actually something that the guideline kind of mentions specifically, right? Especially when it comes to this nudging with the notifications and stuff, is the fact that users should be given the knowledge and the tools to interact with AI systems to a satisfactory degree. So what do you consider satisfactory? Then maybe having a social media addiction is not satisfactory. Yeah. But yeah, I think obviously the manipulation on social media is really probably the focus of the year, because I guess these two things are related, right? If we have the problem that social media is quite addictive and people want to spend more and more time on it, and at the same time you're having all these political campaigns through social media, it's sort of clashing with human agency on both sides, from the sort of small kind of nudges to not allowing for a democratic society. So
Yeah, I actually just wrote a piece on this about how will we see more authoritarian regimes taking place in the future, as of now and into the future, since we are in an age of like surveillance technology, and in an age where like data is being used to like manipulate us, whether that's through politics or whether that's social media in terms of what we're buying and like marketing. And we're being monitored, I guess, at every track now. Even my friend actually sent me an article the other day that said that the UK government is using AI to watch people on the street to see if they're social distancing.
oh my
So
god,
again, yeah, that makes me think about the human agency side. I was like, do I have agency right now? No, I don't.
that's pretty scary. And I think I read the UK has the highest numbers of like surveillance cameras in the world or something. So I think there's some kind of a competition or something to see how far can you go without being caught on some kind of CCTV in the UK.
Oh, 100%. And I think it's kind of ironic that people are very quick to, in terms of the UK anyway, because it's considered a democratic society, they're very quick to point the fingers at China and be like, oh my God, China, communism, authoritarian regime. They monitor everything they do. They have obviously the credit system and the score system. But is the UK that drastically different in many ways? Because Brexit was proved to be influenced by Cambridge Analytica and data, and basically the government wanting you to vote a certain way. And then now you have the use of these systems that are like following you, I guess, with coronavirus and digital contact tracing. But are they necessarily being used for good or for bad? So that's again with the human agency side, that would make me question it.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting about the whole Brexit thing is that even after they showed that, Cambridge Analytica had been involved with the Leave campaign, etc., I think there were a lot of people that called to have a new referendum or have the referendum slashed because there had been all these issues. And I mean, I think there were other legal issues that they spent money that they weren't supposed to spend or something. But the government decided not to have a second referendum because they felt like it would undermine democracy.
Yeah, ironically.
Yeah, extremely ironic, right? But some people have said that this is essentially the end of democracy, the fact that you can do this, because, it's not democratic to not have another referendum because there was all this manipulation going on. But also, I can understand the feeling that saying, no, the first one didn't count, we're going to have another one, can come across as well as like, well, we didn't get the outcome that we wanted. Because, I mean, the government at the time, right, David Cameron, was not a Brexiteer.
No. Nor was Boris Johnson, may I add.
True. Or Theresa May.
That's another story.
Anyway, so I guess it's kind of that in that case, we're sort of stuck between a rock and a hard place, right? I mean, regardless of how you feel about Brexit, you, the listener, or us, anybody, um, yeah, it's clearly a serious issue that we've had AI um, and social media destroy what is arguably one of the great marks of civilization. And
Hmm.
yeah,
Yeah, I think it's quite worrying actually. And again, like pointing to making the comparison between China, because I think everyone always uses China as the level of authoritarian and surveillance like that we don't
yeah,
want.
yeah,
But I do think the UK isn't drastically far off. Even I think it was it last year or the year before they found out that no one had announced that they were using facial recognition in Piccadilly Circus for advertising campaigns, and it would basically monitor if someone's smiling, it means wow, this campaign's successful, and if they're looking sad, they were just monitoring their facial expressions, but they hadn't made that aware, and they'd never announced that. And I think it turned out to be like an AI company that I think was based in one of the Scandinavian countries. I can't remember which one, but it was like this big controversy because no one had actually consented to, their face being analysed to get data on to see how successful marketing campaigns were in Piccadilly Circus. And those are kind of like creeping things that we're seeing in the UK anyway that aren't being announced. And I think what you said is very true, that we are in an age where it's like, how much AI can we quickly put into the UK without anyone knowing? And then, oh, whoopsie, we've got caught now. We didn't mean to, but not really. I don't know. It's all quite worrying. So I think in terms of the EU guidelines, ironically, we're leaving the EU, but I do think those guidelines are a step in the right direction. But are they going to because they're not it's not a law, is it? It's just a guideline.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, unlike GDPR, which is obviously an actual law, I think this is something that will, using again the UK government or companies in the UK, abide by such guidelines. And I guess it's at their own free will whether they choose to or not.
Yeah, and I think they have said they will continue, like the UK will continue to sort of embrace these guidelines, but again, they are just guidelines, so it's completely left up to countries, companies, etc., if they want to enforce them in any way. And I get the feeling that in a lot of
Mm-hmm.
cases, when you need to weigh out like profit, so how successful is your marketing campaign, or um, for the government, how can we, like, what can we get, not get out of our population, but right in terms of surveillance, etc. Um, then they're going to have to weigh these things out, and I mean there will be public outrage, but maybe not. I mean, I'd never even heard about this marketing campaign thing,
Mm-hmm.
and I think probably the whole issue with Cambridge Analytica, I mean, it just had, and in fact it had been going on for years, right? The Cambridge Analytica thing, where they were involved in so many elections in third world countries, even in the Italian elections, which a lot of people were shocked to find out years later. And it wasn't until they were involved in Brexit, and even actually Brexit, it wasn't until they were involved in the US campaign that
Mm-hmm.
people
Yeah.
really sort of got angry about it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think because I guess in terms of, I think Trump getting into power was like a really pivotal moment in history. So I think because I don't think a lot of Americans truly believed he would get into power. It obviously started off almost as a joke. This like businessman who
Yeah.
doesn't know
Yeah.
anything about politics, international relations, any policies, anything like. And I would argue he might not even know much about business, but that's. And I think so. Everyone thought it was almost a joke. So I think a lot of Democrats got comfortable not thinking that he would actually get elected. So I think it was a big moment in history, and that's why then when the Cambridge Analytica thing came into play, it was like, oh my God, we've been conned, basically, because that's kind of what it is. It's like a cons manipulation scheme that you've kind of fallen into without being necessarily aware.
Yeah, yeah, and I think I also felt a bit like that about
Brexit.
Brexit. I mean, I remember, I remember.
I was
Yeah,
fuming.
I went to bed. I remember, and I think at the beginning, you know, Remain was winning, and I went to bed and I was like super calm and it's gonna be fine. And just waking up in the morning and seeing the news, and I was like, what? How could this happen?
Yeah. I'll never forget that. I was living in New York at the time, and obviously with the time difference, I remember I was in a club slash bar. I looked at the results, and I remember crying.
Oh.
And then everyone there was like, "What are you crying about?" Because I guess in the US,
Drunken
like
girl in the bathroom
UK,
crying.
yeah, just I guess in the US as well, UK and European politics isn't as widely talked about. So
No.
everyone was like, "What are you getting so upset about?" I was like, "Brexit." No one really even knew what Brexit was when I was talk to them. But yeah, I'll never forget that moment because I was extremely sad, and then it set the pace for me. Once Brexit happened, I was like, "Well, Trump's gonna win," and everyone was like, "No, no, you're being really negative," and I was like, "No, Trump's gonna win," and then he did. But I think it makes me more angry thinking that actually it had a whole there was a whole group of people who actually were purposely trying, well, yeah, they conned us, manipulated people. And I think I know there has been outrage, but I still feel like there should be more outrage in how Facebook really, Facebook has a lot to answer for. They've really have a lot to answer for how they've used people. I think it's, yeah, completely. People's human rights were taken away, and I'm not going to forgive Facebook for that, nor Cambridge Analytica.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it definitely. I wonder if these guidelines were put out in 2019. I wonder if they've been out in 2016. Would people have been more aware that these things were an issue? I actually wonder what the effect of the guidelines are. But yeah, I think it really reinforces the idea that it's this guideline of supporting human agency and oversight, which we also need to cover, is really fascinating. Because actually, coming back to the oversight problem, a lot of what happened in Cambridge Analytica is maybe not AI as the way that people tend to imagine AI, kind of like Terminator sort of
Yeah.
thing. So when it comes to the oversight, right? Yeah, there was this whole team of people at Cambridge Analytica, for example, who were actively doing these steps, and I can almost imagine the meetings were like, hey, we could try this and we could try that, and if at any point one of those people had been like, hey guys, actually, are we
Let's not.
yeah, like, let's not, are we actually infringing a basic universal human right? And in the guideline description, the EU really, they emphasize a bit on the idea of the human in command, which is where it's still a human that's making the decisions and is able to override them. And I think we can, even though this wasn't an automatic system, well, I guess it was kind of automatic, but we can't discount the role that humans themselves play in the way that AI can manipulate us and infringe on our agency.
No, I agree. I feel like it's good that they have, again, for people who don't know the guidelines, it's broken down into three parts. It's fundamental rights, human agency, and then human oversight, as Amanda was just saying. And then in human oversight, it has oversight may not be achieved through governance mechanisms such as human in the loop, human on the loop, and human in command approach. And I think it is important to have the human oversight section because actually, I think, yeah, we've spoken about this before, how it's very easy to point a finger at AI and technology, but actually it is humans, really. It's humans. So,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
humans have the control and have the power to actually choose which way the AI goes. Like it's a human choosing whether the AI is going to manipulate you or whether the AI is going to do something positive or negative. So I think in, like you were saying, in the Cambridge Analytica scandal, it's really, wow, it's really outrageous that no one, I don't, well, I guess we don't know. I don't know the insides of the company. Maybe there was someone, but they got ignored. But from my knowledge and what I've seen, is there wasn't anyone who was like, guys, you know, this is wrong. We're actually gonna be causing world's like destruction basically by having
Yeah. Yeah.
by influencing elections. To me, it's just like it's just beyond what I know. Obviously, we've in history there's propaganda. There's always been propaganda, and that's how certain like
Mm-hmm.
dictators have come into rise. But having that kind of a level, I felt like it was a new level of manipulation because I think propaganda in the past, if you saw a poster being like vote for this person or little bits of propaganda, even I know the American elections have always been wild with their advertising campaigns, but this was like new level, harvesting people's data, putting people into sections of groups. And I actually watched this documentary on Channel 4 the other day about how they've got all the data back now from Cambridge Analytica and how they directly chose black voters who they knew weren't likely to vote and pushed them through advertising not to vote. And the guy went
Mm-hmm.
to meet all these people who he was like, oh, I've got your name, I've got your date of birth, I've got your address, I've got whether you're a renter, whether you're a mortgage owner, all this information. And he was like, asked them, like, you know, you didn't vote, did you, in the last election? And they were all like, no. And it was just, yeah, it's disgraceful how that's happened. And
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
hoping, well, it's probably happening now, right now, as we build up to the election. I don't think Facebook is completely innocent still. And they say they're making changes, but are they?
Yeah. I mean, that's yeah. I can't imagine that sort of the data science of politics is going to go away anytime soon. Um, and I guess that kind of puts the onus on people to seek out more information and all of that. But that's kind of forcing people to do something that they might not have had to do in the past, right? And even I don't know, even having to fact check everything that you see on social media and all of that before you can. That's a tremendous amount of work, and I know there are some websites now that I think PolitiFacts or something, they fact check things that politicians say, but for every article that you see online that you have to go and check everything, that is a full-time job, especially when you think about how companies have built social media to make us spend as much time on it as possible.
Yeah.
Like it's just this kind of like a vicious circle. But yeah, coming back to the employees of Cambridge Analytica or other companies kind of not stopping, I guess it's similar to it was that book, the Banality of Evil, where the at the time you had the Nazi soldiers, and to be clear, I'm not saying that this is necessarily equivalent. It's just a similar thing that you're just kind of doing your job, right? And your job was to win an election, and how could you do it? And so I think it really sort of again highlights that we really need to always take a step back and think about what it is that we're doing, and is it aligned with our values, because I don't think that people who work at Cambridge Analytica or Facebook or anything like that are evil masterminds out
Oh
to
no.
control the masses. um but yeah, it's
Yeah, I think, in my opinion, I don't think, obviously, that Facebook employs thousands and thousands of people. I don't think every person that works at Facebook is evil or like intentionally going out of their way to cause harm. I do think it comes from the top, though, a lot of times. And I do think Mark Zuckerberg has, as a person, should take accountability for the fact that it was evident he knew what Facebook was taking part in. And I think it was clear from when he was interviewed by Congress that he knew what he was doing. And the fact he even denied to come and talk to the UK Parliament and stuff like that. So I think he I think people in those positions of power need to take the accountability really and understand that they can make a difference in a positive or negative way, and then they influence, I guess, how the organization rolls. But I think obviously we've seen the past few years anyway, lots of people who work in these organizations like Google and Facebook and Amazon protesting for what happens within the company and their own rights and how their systems are being like deployed. So yeah, I think it's it's a crazy time.
Yeah. Anyway, and I think on that we're actually up on our
On our
time.
time.
Yeah. So I guess kind of the takeaway from that is that we really want to emphasize just how important this principle is and how it's a really good one to start, and I think it was a really good first principle because it feeds into so many other principles like accountability, for example, which we will talk about in a few weeks.
100%. I was just thinking as a principle, this is one that, yeah, every principle kind of feeds into the human agency part. So yeah, it's definitely a good one. And I think these principles are set in the right direction and hopefully more companies will adopt them.
Yeah. Okay, well, with that, thank you very much for listening.
Yeah, thank you for tuning in, guys. Next week we'll be talking about technical robustness and safety. And as always, if you want to follow us on social media, we're on Twitter at Let's Chat Ethics. And thank you for listening. See you next week.
See you next week. Bye.
Bye.